So what can I say but welcome to all of you. Welcome to the 200 plus people who are currently on our 2020 BMT Thrivership virtual celebration. Man, we all live in incredible times. We've all had to go through COVID and what it means for our patients, our families, what it has meant for you and your caregivers. But I mean, a couple of months ago, we had a long discussion about whether we should still have this event. And it was unanimous that we all felt that this event was important. It was important to recognize that life goes on, that we will overcome this, that you've already overcome a lot. So on behalf of the bone marrow transplant, both pediatric and adult team, thank you for being here, being virtual, and being present. We have a very, short presentation. When we've tried to want to thank all the administrative team, Erica Bellet, Jill from our media. I want to thank Chelsea Brooklyn, who helped us put this together. And please, please, please send us feedback. We're thinking about that this will be a part of our future Thrivership celebrations. So we're all here, virtual but present. Next one. So, big announcement. So, as many of you may have heard through the grapevine, I have been requested to take over the position of Head Division of Hematologic Malignancies to help our head of the Division of Hematologic Malignancies, Dr. Marcel Vandenbrink, to continue to move forward cellular therapies at Memorial Sloan Kettering, particularly the new cell therapy service that we hope to begin in July of next year. And as such, my deputy or our current adult BMT service chief, Miguel Perales. And with bittersweetness, I can say he will be our host together with JJ Bolins, our pediatric BMT service chief, as our next host for next year. You have seen this slide every year, but I think it really speaks a lot that each and every one of you were touched by more than 450 people at Memorial Sloan Kettering. And each and one of those 450 people feels honored and privileged to have been part of your care. We're honored and privileged because you have entrusted the most important thing that you can, which is your life and your health. You could have gone anywhere and you came to us, and we thank you for that. And this celebration is, I think, a recognition that it wasn't only these 450 people, but we are today because of you and your family, your courage, your ability to move on. And we recognize, look, we are not at 100%, but that's what we're striving for. Our goal is to get you, everybody who comes to us, to get back to their normal life. But we want to thank all the people who worked with you to get you there. So some of you have heard me talk about this. 30 years ago when I started in transplant, I coined the term of triple P transplants. We push the drugs, we pour the cells, and we pray that it works out. A couple of years ago, one of our junior faculty, Mike Scordo, said we need to transform this to a new triple P transplant. Precise, personalized, and predictable. We have 6 areas where we're working on. Precision drug dosing, and Dr. Bolins has been a pioneer in this area. Microbiota, which, Dr. Vandenbrink, Dr. Pellet have been pioneers here, as well as IT colleagues. Donor selection and alternative donor transplantation. We're finding the best donor for each of our patients. graft versus host disease and immune reconstitution, toxicity, supportive care, and survivorship. And this is a new area. And I'm going to ask, with apologies, and look, I recognize I'm 62 years old, but the number of patients over the age of 60 who are undergoing transplant has increased exponentially. All our survivorship protocols are focusing on patients who are transplanting in the earlier ages of life. So many of you will be contacted by me or their primary physicians to ask them, would you mind to have a comprehensive geriatric assessment? Our colleagues in geriatrics have agreed to work with us to identify areas in which we might not be providing the care we think we need to provide. We need to find what the gaps are. We want you to be a healthy 70-year-old. We want you to be a healthy 80-year-old. We want to be a healthy 90-year-old, and if possible, a healthy centenarian. And finally, despite everything we do, relapse remains the single most important cause of treatment failure, and we need to prevent that from happening. So it is with great pleasure that, this might be the last time I will be the master of ceremony for this, but I promise each and every one of you, I expect to be here for many years to come. It has been a pleasure to lead the adult BMT service. It's a pleasure to give the Master of Ceremonies to my friends and colleagues, Dr. Bolins and Dr. Perales, who will continue with this program as we move forward. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy what we have in store for you.
Thanks, Sergio, for this really great and kind intro. And it's a great pleasure to be here with all of you. And a lot has been said by Dr. Gerald already. But I would like to add a couple of sentences. It has now been over 2 years that I came to MSK with a clear mission for the pediatric BMT and cell therapy program. First of all, to continue to, let's say, deliver excellent patient care, but also to create the most innovative and leading center in the nation and in the world. A center that further improves the survival chances. And as already pointed out by Dr. Gerald, we are not there yet. The survival has increased significantly over the last couple of years, but it needs to be better. And not only on the short term, but also on the long term. Longer survival with no sequelae and no residual disease burden. In such a way that we can have even bigger events than what we have now, and hopefully back in, let's say, person soon. I already told you BMT has become way safer over the last decades, from less than 10% in the 70s to 60-70% survival nowadays. And that's because we better understand transplants. But it's not enough, because the need is still there, with 30 to 40% not surviving long term. And with better precision transplants, safer transplants, we can achieve that goal. And that's my goal, and that's the goal of my whole team, because it's, as already pointed out by Dr. Gerald, you are not only touched by the attendings, you are really touched by hundreds of people from MSK. And despite the COVID pandemic and the rapidly changing, uncertain world we are living in, we were able over the last 2 years to streamline and harmonize the care in pediatric transplants. And of course, we have a great and fruitful collaboration with the adult service as well. And when I'm, let's say, talking we, I'm not only talking about the attendings, but also about the PharmDs, the clinical trial nurses, the APPs, the fellows rotating in our program, nursing, administrators, ancillary services, who are all taking care of you and of future patients. So really a big shout out to all of them. And I'm really confident we are able to bring even more innovation, more, let's say, patients, and a better survival and with a better quality of life in the upcoming years and decades to go. Again, big kudos to everyone who is making our program a success. Now, it's a great pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Susan Prokop and Berenice Martinez, who was one of the, let's say, patients treated here at MSK by Dr. Prokop a couple of years ago. And Dr. Prokop is the head of clinical research in our service, and she is championing the antivirus cellular therapies at MSK, but she is also one of the most passionate attendings I know. I hand over to Dr. Prokop.
Hi, I'm Susan Prokop, and I'm one of the pediatric TCT attendings on the transplant service. And I have the real honor of introducing Berenice Martinez to speak with you today. And Berenice really epitomizes a thriver after transplant. Berenice actually had an initial transplant from her HLA-matched younger brother, and unfortunately relapsed after that transplant and had a second transplant. So she's a double thriver. And she's going to tell you about her path and also about what an inspirational young person she has become in a couple different arenas of her life. But she's inspired all of us all along. We miss you.
Oh, thanks. Miss you too. Like Dr. Prokop said, my name is Bernice. I was first diagnosed with AML when I was 14 years old during my first year of high school. So that was very difficult. And then I was diagnosed with AML again when I was in my senior year. So for this event, I want to focus more on the second time I was in MSK. I was diagnosed with AML when I came for my monthly checkup, or it was like every 2 months by then. And they called me again after my checkup the next day to tell me that they found something strange in my blood. So I went back the next day. I try to have this positive attitude, obviously. You're trying not to think of the worst things possible going on in your life at that moment or possibilities. And I kept thinking, maybe it's a mistake or they forgot to do something, and trying to convince my parents as well. Unfortunately, it wasn't an error because they really don't make errors. But yeah, that moment was devastating when they officially told me that I had AML again. It was a very unfortunate time for me. And during that time, they told me I was with my friend as well and my mother. So it was a very difficult moment in time for my life. At the same time, I was glad that it was my doctors, Dr. Prokop and Dr. Otero, who told me, because they've been through this whole entire journey with me since my first year of high school, right? And now it's my senior year, so hey, at least I get to graduate with them as well. I honestly felt not necessarily at peace, but comfortable with the idea that I was going to be back in MSK, knowing that I knew a lot of the nurses and doctors there and how they took care of me and how they will at that moment take care of me in the future, trying their best to alleviate my pain and help me get better. And yeah, I was very grateful for them, for my parents who were always there and barely ever left my side. I really want to thank all of you because you were you were also a key to my getting better, right? To getting motivated and keep moving forward. And yeah, I just really wanted to thank you too, since I haven't seen you in quite a while, Dr. Prokop. Thank you so much. I'm really grateful for MSK and their staff especially. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, and we thank you, and you inspire us, and you're why we all do what we do. One thing was that because Berenice's first transplant was from her brother, who was significantly younger than she was, he wasn't there at the bedside a lot, and her parents both were. So the family really went through significant separation during, especially her first transplant. Berenice also always struck us as being incredibly mature for her age, and frequently was participating in conversations that were very sophisticated for a high school freshman. By the time she was a high school senior, we all knew how mature she was, and all those conversations weren't a surprise, but it was really inspiring and impressive. And also our job to remember that she was a high school freshman.
I remember during my junior year when I was actually able to go back to school, it was a little difficult for me to like actually converse with people my age and talk about like normal stuff. Yeah.
Berenice, why don't you tell everybody what you're in school for now?
I go to New York University. I'm studying mechanical engineering right now. Actually, I'm in school right now in the classroom.
You know, the transition from being an active patient to being a patient who maybe comes for a checkup once a year is gradual. And I think as the caregivers, we don't quite notice it happening until all of a sudden we're not seeing you often at all, and we miss you. And we miss the frequent updates in your life, but it's wonderful to see you out there and thriving.
Definitely, the feeling is mutual because it goes from every 2 times a week to once a month, and then like you said, once a year. You barely even notice how you're spreading apart. You're starting to separate from each other, and start for me, start college classes or other extracurriculars, stuff like that. And
Yep.
You kind of just drift away, but not in a bad way. It's like I like to see you, but hey,
yeah,
let's make it once a year.
yeah, socially.
Yes.
On the street, socially distanced.
Yes, 6 feet apart.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. This is Miguel Perales, the Chief of the Adult Bone Marrow Transplant Service. And I'm really so happy to be with you tonight, even if it's virtual, and great to see so many faces. Thank you, Berenice, for sharing that story with us. It was, like so many stories of our patients, so moving and so inspiring. And I think I think back to one of the stories that I heard this year from one of my patients, that so many things were going on that she actually forgot her transplant anniversary. And she realized a few days later, because she was celebrating her birthday's brother, and she remembered that it was always a few days apart. And she said to me, that really means that I've moved on, that I no longer even think about that day, and that life has moved on. I think this year has been particularly difficult for many people, with COVID, as you've heard. It's had a significant impact on life in New York, on delivering healthcare in New York, and especially on our patients and their families and their caregivers and their friends. But I think people have also learned a lesson out of the page book of transplant patients. And I did something in the spring that my 15-year-old actually thought was a cool thing to do. I got interviewed by BuzzFeed, which I hadn't really heard about, but apparently 15-year-olds get their news from. And they asked me about social distancing. And the quote they ended up using was that bone marrow transplant patients are the world experts at social distancing. They've been doing this for a while, and they have no problem with this. They know what it is to wear a mask and to be careful and to be safe. I think the other lesson we've learned is that, by putting patients front and center, as we always have here at Memorial, we've continued to take care of patients throughout the pandemic. We've never closed down. We've learned to adapt. Many of you have seen us through not necessarily Zoom, but other video chats. We've continued to follow with patients, and we've continued to transplant patients, which I think at the end of the day is why we are here, to continue to provide these life-saving treatments to patients. I'd like to next introduce my colleague Oscar Lahoud, who's one of our physicians on the transplant service, and I'm sure many of you know him. And he's also going to introduce one of his patients, Dan Ruper. Thank you again for joining us this evening, and I look forward very much to seeing you in person next year. Thank you.
Yeah. How are you, buddy?
Good, Dan. How's it going?
Good to see you. So bad. Really good.
Same here. Today we're meeting Daniel Ruper, a fantastic gentleman who was diagnosed with primary central nervous system lymphoma back in 2016. And that's a type of an aggressive blood cancer that traditionally involves lymph nodes, but in rare cases like this one can involve the brain and other parts of the central nervous system. I remember when I met Dan, when he transferred his care after an outside institution, he still had some residual symptoms. And I remember exactly what you had said. You described it as having a windshield in the rain with no wipers.
Right.
So he required a little bit of additional treatment, including radiation to the orbits. And then we proceeded to the transplant ultimately in December 2017. And now you're 3 years after your transplant, thriving like a champion with no evidence of disease recurrence. So welcome, Dan, and tell me, how are you doing today? And how's the family?
The family is great. Lynn is great. The kids are great. The dogs are great. So life is good. I'm so blessed and fortunate to have each day now, and really appreciate that. My whole experience with MSK, and Dr. Lahoud, when I first met you, you looked in my eyes. I was holding Lynn's hand. You said, it's going to be okay. We can do this. Your numbers look good. We can do this. And that confidence, and I could sincerely see into you how you were looking at me. It just gave me the strength with my family to say, okay, we can hunker down. We can do this together. Let's go. And you and your team, including Dr. Sauter, who I met during my transplant process, I can't say enough at how great you guys are at being human. You're great scientists, great doctors, but your humanity, the way you treat a patient and you care for the inner person is unbelievable.
Yeah, so can you tell us a little bit more about, because you met me first, I think we were in Rockville Center before we moved to our new place in Nassau. And then for the transplant, you were on M8, I believe, in our main hospital.
Yeah.
And how has this transition from one side to another? And yeah, tell us just about the experience throughout these places.
The transition, we often went to Rockville Center because that's where I was getting the radiation treatment for the orbs. Again, the staff, the support, Coco, who was in that office at the time, just everyone was amazing. It's like you were going home for Thanksgiving with family, even though you were going through a horrible thing. The personalities and the way you were handled and treated was great. The switch to M8, again, totally cared for. I had no fear. About my life because I just so trusted the way you communicated, the way Dr. Gromas communicated, Dr. Francis communicated, and I knew you were giving me all of the information, not just the information that was going to make me feel better. I felt loved. I really did. I can say that truly. You really wanted my life to to go forward, and you did everything possible to make that happen. And Doc, I have to share something with you, and you may not even remember this. Right after they did the transplant on December 14th, I became flush. My body was reacting quite strenuously to the transplant going back into me, and I was sick. I was regurgitating. You actually put your hand on my back and you rubbed my back and you said, it's going to be okay, Dad. And that was a moment, and I'll never forget that. You were there for me at a very, very difficult time, just not as my doctor, but as my friend.
Now, 3 years later, tell us about you today. What's your life like?
Okay.
How do you spend your days? And
I remember Lynn taking my hand and saying, "This disease has taken a year of your life." She goes, "Don't let it take the rest of your life. With your help and hers, that motivated me to be where I am 3 years later, which is running a business together with her, fishing with our sons and our daughter. My kids got me a rescue puppy a year and a half ago, so he's my best bud in terms of walking and running and everything. So I'm doing all of the things, probably more than I did before, because I appreciate quite a bit more the little things, and I appreciate the big things, but they're all big things now. Trust, warmth, compassion. We cry together, we laugh together. It's just a wonderful thing. I've truly been blessed. I was blessed before this happened. And people say, "Oh, are you mad or you're resentful?" I said, no. I said, I'm here. I've had a great life, and I get to continue to live it. So how can I be angry or resentful?
well, I can't thank you enough for sharing all this emotional journey. And as I've said before, you've been a great inspiration. You're loved by all our staff, and it's been great really being alongside you, thriving these past few years, and great to see you back to a normal, healthy life, which is what our goal is.
I know I don't get to thank everyone individually. I had a very personal relationship with you, so I was able to share my thoughts with you in a note. But your team, your colleagues, I hope truly that they know how much of a difference they make in how they do what they do. Not so much what they do, how they do it. Yes, what they do is amazing, but how they do it makes the difference. I just want your entire team to know, incredible. Just you're all, you're walking this earth doing amazing things.
Wow. What can I say? Couple of things. Thank you for all the speakers. This was wonderful. Please give us feedback. We're thinking as we're getting, this is the improvisational part about this. This thrivership event has become so large that as we move forward to our face-to-face, we're thinking we can't have you all in one same room for a variety of reasons. But we think that a hybrid version of an in-person and a virtual will be great for all of us. So I would like to have the last couple of slides, and the last shout out is we are streaming this to our patients who are currently undergoing through the journey that you went through many years ago. And I'm going to ask you to all look at your chat. And if you don't know your chat, you can see it. You can look at, there's a chat box there. And it's on the right side of your screen. If you hover over it and click it, it will come out. There will be the Zoom links to the breakout sessions, and the breakouts have been divided according to how many years from the transplant you are. I want to thank Jill Logan and all the events team. This has been wonderful. We were actually concerned we were going to be Zoom bombed, and thank God we were not Zoom bombed. And for those of you who are looking back, that is a rooster. This was embroidered by my mother now more than 60 years ago, so we keep it close. And a rooster, for many of you in the Latin American tradition, a rooster is a sign of prosperity, in a sign of future health. And we're hoping that this rooster will be a sign of the future health for all of you. And it's on behalf of, my mother made it many years ago, and I know she is very glad that you're all sharing with it. So we are going to ask everybody I'm going to ask Erica and the events team to unmute everybody. And before we go to the breakout session, I want everybody to scream, shout, and applaud so that the people on M7 and eBay can hear you. Let's tear down the internet.
Can do it.
Thanks to everybody. And I want to send the last one is, we do a lot. We need your help to do more. There's a lot of ways to help us. Write over your scenes, look at the link for the group that matches your survivor anniversary. And then these are all the areas that you can give back. Please feel free. No amount is too small. We need all the help you can get. Thank you once again, and enjoy the rest of the time. And remember, please, please, please give us feedback.